Good afternoon, good evening. We will start the forum soon in 3-4 minutes. Thank you. Thank you all for joining the forum. Thank you. I believe we will start broadcasting soon. I would like to thank all the speakers that are joining us today. I hope you are all connected. I see many names already. So I believe we are almost ready to start. Thank you. Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to the Asia Public Governance Forum. My name is Paulo Magina. I'm the Deputy Head of Division from the Infrastructure and Public Procurement Division in the Public Governance Directorate. We are organizing this Asia Public Governance Forum under the theme Infrastructure Governance in Times of COVID-19. in partnership with the OECD Korea Policy Center. This webinar is following a series of webinars and data collection from the OECD regarding the role of infrastructure in the crisis. During the summer, we produced several webinars. We also did a stock-taking report and a policy brief on the role of infrastructure and public procurement in the recovery following the pandemic crisis. These recordings are also available on our website. I would also like to thank the OECD Korea Policy Center for the sponsorship in organizing this event. We also had 1 month ago the OECD Infrastructure and Public Procurement Week, where we had the 5th Forum on the Governance of Infrastructure, a global event that collected good practices in terms of infrastructure governance and delivery. The summary and information regarding this event is also available on our website. I would like to inform all participants that this event is being recorded for further distribution. And I would like also to welcome all participants to pose your questions on the chat using the Zoom chat available here, but also on social media using the hashtag OECD Infra. So without further ado, I would like to start by giving the floor to Dr. Hong Tak Chun, the Executive Secretary of the OECD Korea Policy Center. Dr. Chun, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paolo Magina. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I welcome you all to the Asia Public Governance Forum on Infrastructure Governance in times of COVID-19. Before I go on, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude towards Mr. John Ivo, Special Counselor to the New Zealand Government Procurement and Property, for being with us today. And my special thanks goes to Mr. Edwin Lau, Mr. Paolo Magina, and their team, who spared no effort for preparing this event. I'm also thankful to you all for taking time out of your very busy schedule to attend this forum. It is my privilege and pleasure to address you today on the subject of infrastructure, especially the governance of infrastructure. The COVID-19 pandemic has posed unprecedented challenges in every sphere of life and pushed governments into uncharted territory. Never has a health crisis reached such proportions, gripping all the countries around the world and crippling the global economy. In this context, the public procurement was at the front line of the battle against the pandemic, and countries had to swiftly adapt to the radically different purchasing environment. Responses such as lockdowns and confinement measures also put government supply chains at risk. Against this backdrop, it is more than welcome that the OECD Council has adopted the recommendation on governance of infrastructure back in July this year. It provides a useful tool for governments to invest in the right infrastructure projects, which can be cost-effective, affordable, and trusted by investors, citizens, and other stakeholders. Not to mention that it also provides good practices and tools to support the linkages between economic stimulus interventions, long-term infrastructure programs, and multidisciplinary objectives. Even though COVID-19 has devastated workers and communities across the world, as we start to find solutions, we must not only focus on short-term relief, but also the ways that will take us up to long-term success. Protecting and investing in our fundamental infrastructure can help us achieve both. Under these circumstances, I believe this forum is very timely and meaningful for all stakeholders get together, sharing respective experiences and finding better ways for infrastructure governance. Policy ideas, stimulating dialogues. I also very much look forward during this forum. To bring my remarks to a close, I once again wholeheartedly welcome all of you who have come to attend this forum and express my sincere gratitude to speakers, respondents, and to all the participants. Even though one day, technically 2.5 hours, is a rather short period of time, I hope the experiences you will gain from this forum will turn out as better policies in your countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shun. Your inspiring words are setting the scene in a very nice way. And I believe many of the topics you touched upon will be relevant for all the sessions we are having throughout these 2.5 hours session, as you said. I would like now to introduce Mr. John Ivell, the former director and now the special counselor to the New Zealand Government, Procurement and Property, and the chair of the OECD Working Party of the leading practitioners in public procurement. John, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Paolo. Tēnā koutou katoa, and a warm welcome to delegates from different countries across Asia. And thanks to the OECD for setting up this event and for inviting me to say a few words as chair of the LPP at the commencement. In previous years, the OECD has hosted a number of meetings on infrastructure governance in the region, and I'm hoping that this meeting will build on previous goodwill and learnings and provide further opportunities for cooperation in the future. Asian countries, like the rest of the world, are facing many challenges, especially in the wake of COVID-19. In fact, even prior to the crisis, countries were facing challenges to meet infrastructure needs. Now, although Asian countries have made considerable efforts to increase infrastructure investment by more than 50% between 2007 and 2015, according to the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, the region is still likely to underperform on all 17 SDG goals. In fact, the COVID-19 crisis has further hindered progress on achieving the 2030 SDGs worldwide. Global trade is still deeply affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Trade in the Asia region has suffered due to weak external demand and supply chain disruptions. And given that many emerging Asian economies are highly reliant on global supply chains, countries will need to revamp their trading strategy in order to improve the reactivity and efficiency of supply chains. The Asia and Pacific region also remains vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. According to the Asian Development Bank, from 2000 to 2018, developing Asia accounted for 84% of the 206 million people affected by disasters globally on average each year. Now, infrastructure investment is going to be very important to support sustainable and inclusive recovery. Infrastructure investment has the potential to boost countries' economies, to deliver gains in productivity and competitiveness, and to generate jobs and to improve overall well-being. In fact, investments in infrastructure can also increase countries' ability to implement novel supply chain strategies that utilize digital technologies and connectivity. It is also a lever for developing or delivering strategic objectives related to sustainable and inclusive growth. And some examples include addressing climate change mitigation, enhancing resilience, increasing underserved and vulnerable populations' access to infrastructure services, and to tackle regional disparities. Infrastructure governance is key to unlocking or fully unlocking benefits from infrastructure investments. Infrastructure investment is as much about mobilising resources as it is about better managing infrastructure investment. Governments face the complex task of ensuring that investments will effectively respond to both economic recovery as well as social and environmental needs. As we all know, infrastructure investments are long-lived, and thus aiming to tackle today's challenges is not enough. Infrastructure investment decisions will need to address resilience risks to which countries are already exposed and to anticipate new ones in the future. Countries remain at the centre of the implementation of infrastructure governance good practices. Stronger institutional capacities are necessary to deliver quality infrastructure investments. A whole of government approach is also needed to improve strategic planning, procurement, budgeting, stakeholder participation, coordination across levels of government, regulation, monitoring, and evaluation. Now, the team at the OECD have put together an exciting agenda for today's forum. The discussion will begin with an in-depth presentation of the new OECD recommendation on the governance of infrastructure and its potential use in the region. The recommendation on the governance of infrastructure was adopted earlier this year in July and encapsulates shared experiences and lessons learned across OECD countries for efficient, transparent, and responsive decision-making processes in infrastructure investment. The following sessions will dive deeper into three important aspects of infrastructure governance in today's context: strategic planning of infrastructure for the recovery phase, procurement or public procurement strategies for infrastructure delivery, and monitoring and evaluation frameworks for better governance of infrastructure. We will end the day with final reflections on how to take the discussions forward in the context of building a stronger partnership for infrastructure governance and delivery in Asia through the development of regional networks. Now, we welcome your active participation in shaping this global policy debate and look forward to working together in supporting the implementation of infrastructure governance good practices in your countries. Thanks again for your attendance, and now I'll hand it back to Paolo.
Kia ora, John. Thank you so much. Thank you also for linking all these different challenges and objectives that we are going to discuss throughout the forum. I know this is a virtual event, but I will encourage all speakers to turn on the cameras so that we can see you and that we can connect with you in an easy way. John already mentioned the four content sessions we will have in the forum. We organized the forum with 30 minutes sessions, sharp and concise, in order to bring the topics. As mentioned, this is the beginning of a regional debate. We hope to continue in the next years in the region. So the idea is that we will bring the views from the OECD or a member country, and also a reflection coming from the region for each of the sessions. We will start now with session one. The session one is about the new OECD recommendation on the governance of infrastructure, as we already heard, and how this new instrument, this new tool can be used in the region. I would like to start by inviting Ana Maria Ruiz, policy analyst from the Infrastructure and Public Procurement Division at OECD, to present a new recommendation on the governance of infrastructure. Ana, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Many thanks, Paulo, and thank you for everyone for attending this seminar, regional seminar on the governance of infrastructure. It's a pleasure for me to present today the recently launched recommendation on the governance of infrastructure. And both Paulo and Jan mentioned this was just recently approved, and it's the first time that we presented in a regional event, and I'm glad that we are doing in such an important region such as Asia, and we are happy to share and get your views from how this recommendation can support recovery efforts in the region. So without saying much more, I would like to start with the context that we are living and what will be the impact of the recommendation in the recovery efforts for the COVID-19 pandemic. If we start with the slides, we will have three main aspects that I would like to highlight. First, the context of uncertainty that we are living, the need to respond with stabilizing policies, but also the role that infrastructure governance will have in ensure the expected outcomes and ensure that we as a whole can get out of the crisis in a successful way. In terms of the uncertainty we are living, we see that in general terms, all the economy has been deeply affected by the crisis, as it was highlighted by the OECD Economic Outlook for Southeast Asia, China, and India. The GDP is forecast to decline by 40.3 percentage points in Asia and by 2% points in emerging Asia in 2020. So it's a large contraction that was due also from the decrease of net capital flows in the region. And we also see that there is high level of divergency among different countries. So it's a deep effect in the entire economy, but also is affecting in a larger effect to some particular countries in the regions. In terms of the need to respond with stabilizing policies, we see across the world, but also in the region, the need to maintain an expansionary fiscal policy and how countries are looking to accelerate public infrastructure investment. Not only in Asia, but around the world, we see that infrastructure investment has been as a tool not only to make sure that the economy responds to the crisis, but that we invest in the right infrastructure projects. So this can help to cope with some of the issues that we have seen in terms of environmental resilience, gender, different across regions, for example, and infrastructure will have a potential effect on this. Across the region, we have seen that this is the case of Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, and Laos that have already expressed that as part of their recovery packages, infrastructure will have a large effect in their countries. We also see that we're working on the higher debt levels that could jeopardize investment into future projects. Hence, we will see the importance to focus on fiscal sustainability and affordability of projects. And regarding the role of infrastructure governance, we will see in more detail. The recommendation was prepared before the crisis, but I think it comes at a timely moment because it provides of the right institutions and decision-making process to make sure that this investment is done, as I said, during a prudent fiscal management framework, that it can have an impact not only in terms of economic development, but also has an important and positive effect on environment and resilience challenges that we are facing, and that it helps strengthen regional cooperation. So let's start going into the next slide. So we see the different angles that we provide in the recommendation. There are 10 pillars that cover the entire life cycle of the infrastructure project, starting from the strategic vision of infrastructure, how it needs to be aligned with the capital budgeting framework, for example, and how it needs to be sustainable and affordable for both the government, but also for citizens in case there is user fees involved in the process. They need to have an efficient and effective procurement process understood in a larger extent, not only during the tender process, but throughout the delivery of the infrastructure project, how to involve stakeholders in a constructive way. So it goes beyond having the right consultation processes, but ensure that the right citizens, private sectors, and different NGOs, for example, can participate from the strategic planning process all the way to have a role in monitoring and delivering of infrastructure. Coordination across levels of government, it's highly important. We have seen that almost 60% of investment is done at the subnational level in OECD countries. Hence, the need to ensure that this is a process that is coordinated between the national, the regional, and the municipal level. In terms of having the right regulatory framework that supports all of this investment, but also ensures that the private sector is confident to participate, how to manage threats of integrity, it's of major importance. We know that infrastructure investment is a large share and it can be easily captured by other interests. So we have some provisions to prevent for that, how to ensure that the decisions are based on evidence and the use of data within the infrastructure lifecycle, how to ensure performance and how to ensure that information that we collect can ensure that the asset is not only delivered, but is well maintained. And this is an important aspect that we recently discussed in the last meeting of our senior infrastructure and PPP network, how to ensure that good governance can not only support the initial investment, but the assets performs throughout the life cycle, including the cost of decommissioning, for example. And the last one, but not the least important, is how to ensure that critical infrastructure is resilient to different types of shocks. And we have seen the importance of this particular recommendation throughout the pandemic. I won't go in more detail in each one of these dimensions. We will go into some of the specifics in session 2, for example, on the long-term strategic vision, on the importance of monitoring to ensure lifecycle performance, and also we would include some aspects of infrastructure resilience in the region throughout the discussion. But I wanted to give you a general overview what the recommendation is about to start the discussion with you of how this could support the implementation of the recommendation in the region. And I would like to share with you in my next slides how we could envision to implement the recommendation within OECD countries, but also providing interesting tools for the region. So we have prepared two major inputs to help for the implementation. The first one, if we go to the first slide, will be on how to design a toolkit that can support implementation. What will we have in these toolkits? It will be a sharing platform that has practical guidance and advice in each one of these topics. For example, we're starting some work on how to ensure cost-benefit analyses are well fit within the infrastructure governance framework. So it's not only, for example, about having cost-benefit analysis, but how to ensure that the decision-making process around ensure that this type of analysis are independent and are well supported by the whole decision-making process in the government. But we are also trying to build a repository of country examples, how each one of these aspects can be illustrated by good examples in the region. We started already with this process, and how to address concrete challenges as sustainable, inclusive infrastructure investment and delivery. As I said, we started already mapping good practices and examples. We will be happy to include some from the region, so please reach out if you think that there is a good example in your country that could illustrate how to put in practice any of these principles. This is a very good opportunity to broadcast good examples within the pandemic, but also good practices from before. The second tool that we will use to implement the recommendation in OECD countries, if we go to the next slide, it's the indicators project. So what we will try to do is to map OECD countries' state-of-art infrastructure governance. We have developed a survey that we will complement with quantitative elements, and we will collect accurate and comparable country data level. This will provide us with a general assessment of how OECD countries stand vis-a-vis each one of these recommendations that we mentioned. It will help us monitor the recommendation, but it will be also an important tool to self-assess government's capabilities, strengths, and key areas of improvements in each one of these recommendations. We already started with the survey. We will start first implementing it in OECD countries, but we will welcome any interest to implement it also in the region. If you need particular advice in your country, we will discuss different ways that we could use this tool to implement the recommendation around the region. And finally, for our last slide, I just wanted to show you how this indicator will be phased out. So first we start with the recommendations that we thought were particularly relevant for the pandemic. So long-term strategic vision for infrastructure, as I said, affordability and value for money, procurement process to ensure it's well delivered, and critical infrastructure resilience. So this will be the first elements that will be assessed in this first phase. Then we will proceed with the rest of the recommendations to finally in phase 3 compile all the recommendation pillars. This is in general terms what we have in mind for the recommendation. We go to the next slide. Just wanted to conclude with some future avenues for working Asia and infrastructure governance and share some questions for you to discuss. We will have different types of support on infrastructure governance. We have been undertaking it for many years already. We had reviews on infrastructure and PPPs governance. I would like to highlight some, for example, in Kazakhstan, the Philippines, we did a couple of reviews on the PPP governance framework, and it can be developed vis-a-vis our recommendation on the governance of PPPs, but we have also undertaken some on Chile, Argentina, and Spain based on this new recommendation. We will be happy to work with you in the implementation of the recommendation. And as we know, we have this Sustainable Infrastructure Southeast Asia Regional Policy Network when we share, we have a constant dialogue with countries in the region. And we also have regional roundtables on infrastructure governance that we conducted vis-a-vis with the World Bank. We had the last one in Korea in 2018, but we also have other reports and publications. I just wanted to highlight a couple that we had in the region, such as the Asian Principles for PPPs, but also the Southeast Asia Government at a Glance, where we would include some of the results of a recent survey in Asia. So we're looking forward to continue working with you to share the indicators project and eventually use this to provide more information in the region on and support the recovery efforts. Our final slide, I just wanted to put some of these ideas together and ask you to your support if there is, as I mentioned, any case that you would like to highlight in the toolkit. Will be welcome your collaboration, but also we're willing to discuss any potential support at the country level. And with this, I am looking forward with you, to your questions and the future collaboration between the OECD and the region.
Thank you, and thank you for providing an overview of the OECD recommendation on the governance of infrastructure and also the plan for its implementation in OECD and beyond. And like in previous recommendations, we believe this tool will be very useful for different regions, like the Latin American, Caribbean, but also Asia, of course. And I would like to give the floor to Mr. Ferdinand Pexon, the Executive Director of Public-Private Partnerships Center in the Philippines and the Chair of the Regional Policy Network for Southeast Asia, to reflect on the principles from the OECD recommendation. Mr. Pexon, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to commend and congratulate the OECD Council, the Public Governance Committee, and the Regional Development Policy Committee for the recommendations for the governance of infrastructure, thus providing governments with a comprehensive guidance for investing and managing public infrastructure in a way that is strategic, sustainable, affordable, value for money, efficient, effective, inclusive, transparent, above board, and accountable to the public. It is all about building trust, or what one may also call the license of governments to manage public investments. I also thank Ms. Ana Maria Ruiz Rivadeneira for the clear and very informative presentation. I have been asked to reflect on some of the issues that are particularly relevant for the context of the Philippines. The recommendations are in fact very relevant for the agency that I lead, the PPP Center, given the following roles that the center has in the governance of infrastructure. First is recommending policies that address governance issues to a PPP governing board. Second is assisting local government units in establishing PPP policies, rules, and regulations. Third is assisting implementing agencies in project preparation, procurement, and implementation. Fourth, along with other oversight bodies, evaluating infrastructure projects that are for approval by the Investment Coordination Committee. And lastly, monitoring the implementation of PPP contracts, including monitoring the progress of contingent liabilities and assisting implementing agencies in resolving disputes. Now, in line with the second role, the PPP Center is currently developing a framework for assessing PPP codes of local government units. In the Philippines, local government units, such as cities, towns, municipalities, may formulate and legislate their own PPP codes. The local PPP code could supplement the national PPP legal framework, or what we call the BOT law, or could provide policies and rules for joint ventures, a type of PPP not currently covered by the BOT law. The framework is useful to LGUs who are just starting to formulate their PPP codes or wishing to amend their PPP codes that protect public interest throughout all stages of the infrastructure delivery process. Among these are safeguards to ensure value for money, risk mitigation, and integrity in project approval and procurement. Thus, the OECD recommendations on the governance of infrastructure shall be very useful as we finalize our own frameworks for local PPPs. I understand that among the next steps of the OECD is the development of a set of governance indicators that will measure processes, tools, norms of interaction, decision-making processes, and monitoring strategies across adherence. I very much look forward to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paxson, for your remarks and also for bringing the perspective of the Philippines in terms of using of the recommendation. I believe that the way we planned for the implementation of the recommendation clearly reflects the priorities from OECD countries in terms of using strategic planning for the recovery phase, in terms of using effective procurement processes, in terms of infrastructure delivery. Almost all OECD countries are using the procurement frameworks for delivering infrastructure. That is why it's important to bring these topics together. I would like to ask the participants if there are any questions to our speakers in terms of the topics that were mentioned. I don't see any questions coming in the chat. I would like to ask Ana Maria to reflect on what Mr. Paxson just mentioned regarding the use of the recommendation in the Philippines, if possible.
Many thanks, Paulo. And I think the presentation of the Philippines gives us the opportunity to discuss a topic that is very important for the region. And it directly linked with one of the recommendations, which is the second one on value for money, and how to ensure affordability and fiscal sustainability in the region. And what we see is that a recent survey in the region, as I mentioned, that was published in the last Government at a Glance, shows that in general terms, Southeast Asia countries could benefit from more systematic use of value for money assurance for PPPs. And I think the Philippines is a good example on how this type of assessments can be done. But what we can see in the region is that the use of relative value for money to assess PPPs versus other types of infrastructure delivery mode, it's mostly performed only for some projects. So this is still some scope that we could improve in the region. And the use of absolute value for money, it's more used within the PPP delivery mode, but still some countries only use it for projects only above a certain threshold. And in some countries, it's not a technique that is largely used. So we see that this is definitely something that could benefit for the region. It was something that was mentioned and highlighted by Dr. Fernandin, but also we need to think that this discussion goes beyond PPPs. We see that PPPs have had a large effect in the region and still have a large percentage, but we need to remember that most infrastructure is delivered anyways through public delivery and financing. So we need to, and I think the recommendation comes in a good time to make sure that this type of recommendations is applied to both PPPs and other forms of delivery mode. So we hope that this can help shape the discussion in the region in this way.
Thank you, Anna. I don't know if John is still with us. John Ivel.
Yes, I am.
Can you turn your video and?
Really can.
Very good. I just wanted to ask you, how do you see the role of the working party on public procurement in terms of the delivery of infrastructure in the region?
I think there's an important connection between procurement practitioners in different jurisdictions and those planners and implementers of infrastructure investment in those countries as well. It's about making sure that procurements that are planned to deliver on infrastructure investments are well thought through and actually fit with the principles and I guess the outcomes that are expected to be delivered. That needs to be done in a way that's relevant for citizens. That it addresses some of the issues I outlined in my opening around making sure that it can infrastructure is well governed and is used to basically deliver social, economic, environmental outcomes that would be expected as part of an intervention to assist with recovery from COVID-19 and general underinvestment by countries in infrastructure over time. I think it's really important that people communicate.
Thank you so much, John. You know, when we did the webinar series throughout the summer, we collected from the participants the priorities. They were practitioners and they were infrastructure policymakers. The priorities in terms of using infrastructure for the recovery phase. And of course, strategic planning came very high in the agenda, but also linking infrastructure with strategic objectives you just mentioned. And I see a question coming, maybe for Dr. Paxson. The question is, as Asia and the Pacific seeks to build back better, how can countries ensure that immediate social and economic needs take precedence over climate change and sustainability? Don't take precedence, in fact. How to ensure that we have the right balance between the economic objectives, but also the sustainability objectives. Dr. Paxson? Well,
exactly as you said, Paolo, that it's about achieving the right balance. As many of you are perhaps aware, the Philippines just went through another very, very strong typhoon. So it seems that the last one is stronger than whatever the last one was. So fortunately, we didn't lose a lot of, in terms of lives, there were not that many who died, but in terms of the impact on the economy, it's huge. And it highlighted also the lack of resiliency of infrastructure, which is what this balance we are talking about is all about, that in the future, infrastructure should be built in a way that takes into account risks related to climate change. Otherwise, we will always be subjected to, you can say, the whims of climate change and the severe economic impacts. But on the other hand, I should also say that the Philippines early on during the pandemic realized the need to put also a higher priority on certain sectors, health and education, and even information technology, given the big shifts we were seeing with distance learning, with commerce being conducted online as opposed to doing it the traditional way. So there lies the need for different types of infrastructure, but nevertheless, whatever we build, because we still need the hard infrastructure. For IT, that would mean the towers that support communication. They still need to be able to withstand the strong typhoons that we have. So we need them to be sustainable as well. So again, I don't really see it as one taking precedence over the other, but really being able to balance competing issues, but could also be helping one another, especially if we end up with infrastructure that can be sustained throughout time.
Thank you so much. I think your comment brings us to the next session in a very nice way. We will talk a lot about resilience, and I believe we don't have more questions coming to this session. I will start the session 2. We are on time. Session 2 is about the strategic planning of infrastructure for the recovery phase. And in this session, we hope to develop some thoughts about the way to design and implement infrastructure programs that contribute to a sustainable rebound while strengthening infrastructure resilience. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Charles Babion, his advisor for the Director's Office in the Public Governance Directorate. Charles, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paolo. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure to join you in this policy forum in Asia. I understand you already had rich discussions on infrastructure investments, and I wanted to bring in this discussion the key issue of strategic planning of infrastructure investments for the recovery phase, with a specific angle around resilience. And Paulo, as you said, it links up very well with the comment that was just made. Next slide, please. So, yes, clearly the COVID recovery today offers clear opportunities for investments in infrastructure. There are trillions of dollars of investments planned in a number of recovery packages across OECD countries and more globally. And as said in the OECD recommendation on the governance of infrastructure, strategic planning for these investments is essential. I mean, the idea is really to align priorities and needs and reap the full benefits of those infrastructure investments. And in the COVID period we are in, I think everyone talks a lot about resilience, and this is a key element for any new infrastructure investments going forward, and a major consideration for infrastructure strategic planning. Next slide, please. Yes, of course, the COVID-19 has shown the vulnerabilities of our health infrastructure, health systems in general. But when we think about resilience in infrastructure, at the OECD, what we do promote is really to have the larger possible view on your entire portfolio of major risks that can affect infrastructure assets, infrastructure system, either by damaging them or by interrupting the services that they deliver. And when we look at a number of major risks or shocks that hit OECD countries, Asia, the world, globally, we can see that all sectors of infrastructure are vulnerable to a number of different risks. In the slide here, you can see, of course, the Great East Japan earthquake and the impact it had on the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant in Japan, how it affected the electricity, and also travel and many other sectors. Travel also was severely disrupted in this COVID period, and we can think about all the investments made in major airports that nowadays are in very difficult situations. Have put here to illustrate also the transport sector, the Icelandic ash cloud in 2011, which disrupted transportation for a number of months. Of course, we can think in China, the Tianjin harbor blast, which disrupted freight of a few weeks. It's the sixth largest harbor in the world. We can think also more and more about the risk of cyber threats, which in the case of the WannaCry virus, for instance, severely affected the health system in the UK. We've seen also electricity system being more and more attacked by cyber actors. And of course, the major risk that we all think about for the many years to come, which is around climate, and the acceleration of climate change also is a major concern for infrastructure investments. You can see in this map of the United Kingdom how they have a large share of their energy infrastructure which are at risk of sea level rise linked with climate change. So that's my first message. If you want to integrate resilience in your strategic planning for infrastructure, look at your entire portfolio of critical risks. Another element, if we think about the infrastructure landscape of today, I mean, the COVID-19 has been a clear demonstration of the interdependencies and interconnectedness when a shock hits one system, in that case, the health system, how it can have major repercussions across a number of different other infrastructure assets and systems. More and more shock events or disruption can have cascading effects across whole systems, sectors, and borders. So here again, I think the idea is to have really a comprehensive cross-sectoral policy around infrastructure resilience. And for that, international standards such as the OECD Recommendation on Governance of Infrastructure are crucial. Next slide, please. Yeah. Sorry, and next slide. I forgot to say next slide. Yeah. Looking more in depth at the evolution of infrastructure, and I think when we want to have a good strategic planning, we need to integrate a bit of a foresight. As you all know well, infrastructure investments are there for years, if not decades, and it's important to take that into consideration. If we think nowadays about how innovation is changing infrastructure with numbers of innovations that really change how infrastructure systems are being delivering services nowadays, and we can just expect this trend of innovations and change to continue over the next decade. Things about smart grids, renewable energy, autonomous vehicles, and how big data and artificial intelligence is changing the way infrastructure operates. Clearly, this has implications if we think about resilience. We're moving more and more to less centralized systems, more autonomous mechanisms, which can be good in terms of resilience, but can also bring some challenges. In our view, there are increased resilience through the redundancies and flexibility that those innovations can bring, but there are also new forms of vulnerabilities and weak points, particularly around the risks of cyber threats. So yes, think about all the risks, think about all the sectors together to address the interdependency and interconnectedness, and have a foresight view around resilience is key for the future and for strategic planning around that. Next slide, please. So now, if you think about how to build infrastructure resilience in practice, what does it mean? I mean, the goals are to limit the severity of service disruption, to increase the capacity to rebound quickly after a shock, and also, and I think the COVID shows that point quite well, to adapt to evolving risk factors that can materialize clearly within infrastructure life cycles. So around those goals, I mean, there's a diversity of resilience measures that can be designed and implemented across the infrastructure life cycle. On one side, robustness against known risks or redundancies. This can be factored in upfront in design and construction. In the operation phase, business continuity planning, backup solutions are also essential for quick restoration of services, and proper maintenance enable to keep up resilience levels over time. After shocks, also with a longer term consideration, infrastructure retrofitting or renewal can facilitate adapting to changing risks. I think in particular about climate change, for instance. Next slide, please. So if we want to be a bit more practical, I mean, the first thing to do to ensure resilience is to know your risks, to understand them, to evaluate them, so that you can plan accordingly. I just wanted here to illustrate the work that we did on the #1 risk in France, which is a flood of the Seine River in Paris. And we tried to model the economic impact it could have, not only on the Paris metropolitan area itself, but also at the national level, given the importance of this region in the French national economy. And if you look at this table, basically we tried to assess all the damages in terms of public and private capital destruction, having households, businesses, but also a number of infrastructure sector, from electricity to public transport, roads, water infrastructure, etc. And we could see that the damages to infrastructure represent in general 35 to 50% of the total damages caused by a major flood, depending on the various scenarios. But also that the business losses due to infrastructure disruption represent even a higher share of the total business losses. Basically, businesses suffer higher economic damage due to transport disruption or electricity disruption than due to the flood itself that would have destroyed their facilities or their stocks or their other capital elements. Next slide, please. And if we look at the overall impact, I mean, this can really lead to macroeconomic consequences through impact on value chains and critical infrastructure. In the maps here, you can see in the light blue is the area that is affected by the flood itself, but in the darker blue is the area that suffers power disruptions in addition to the flood. And the one in the middle shows the public transportation system and how many of the subway stations cannot be accessed to because of the flood. And the point on the transport is that if there are some major damages, this can take a really long time to recover and rebuild. And the last map is about the major water infrastructure. And when we took all those aspects into consideration, you could see the impact that such a shock had on the French national GDP and the job market, as well as on public debt. I mean, clearly, when you look at the graphs, it can go up to a reduction of several points of national GDP. But I mean, on the graphs, what you can see is the number of quarters. And basically, after 1 year, the impact on GDP or jobs we recover more or less from that. But the public debt, that remains for a longer duration. So first thing is to know well your risks, to try to model them, to calculate them so that you can plan accordingly resilience measures within your infrastructure systems. Yeah, that's the first aspect. Next slide, please. The second thing is to address a number of policy challenges to ensure resilience is integrated upfront in infrastructure investment, but also factored in existing infrastructure systems. In our analysis, I mean, at the OECD, we did quite a lot of work on the resilience of critical infrastructure in particular. And we found out that many of the policy challenges that you can face to increase the resilience relate to governance issues. And that's why there's a very good linkage with the OECD recommendation and the governance of infrastructure. Well, of course, first, I mean, there's a mix of public and private responsibilities when it comes to investing in infrastructure resilience. Infrastructure owners, operators, they'll bear the primary responsibility to protect their assets, maintain service continuity. But governments have a pivotal role to play. They are responsible for public safety, infrastructure delivery and oversight, regulations, and they have expectations also for the continuity of their own services. So while governments and infrastructure stakeholders, they generally would agree on the need for resilience, but views can differ on the level of resilience required and the means to achieve it. Second, data and information. Understanding risks and vulnerabilities. This requires access to data and information owned by multiple stakeholders, and which comes with challenges. Would you wish to share information on your vulnerabilities with the government, especially in competitive sectors? On the other side, operators might need information from governments, for instance, when it comes to cyber threats or the security risks. So there's a need to ensure the right exchanges and sharing of information. Trust, this is key in our view to ensure resilience, to build trust between government and the private sector, so that everyone can benefit from an increased level of resilience. And free riding on others' resilience investment is an important issue, as system resilience is often as strong as the weakest point. The key point here is, in our view, to prioritize most beneficial resilience measures in the single points of failure whose disruption can have the highest consequences. Of course, resilience comes at a cost, and even though those should be compensated in terms of greater reliability of services, but how to integrate those upfront costs into business model while limiting repercussions on costs for customers remain a major question. In this context, there is a variety of policy options for governments, favoring a voluntary engagement with of infrastructure operators and stakeholders with guidance, information sharing mechanisms, trainings, awareness raising activities, or there can be more strict regulatory approaches. The challenge here is to find the right mix, enabling stakeholder engagement and also effectiveness of resilience investments. In our view, those challenges are revealing of the importance of partnerships between governments and infrastructure stakeholders, as well as internationally to engage jointly in a resilience effort. Next slide. So that slide just shows that we've identified a number of policy tools that can be used by governments to increase resilience of infrastructure. 22 in these slides, and this represent the number of countries, OECD countries, who are using those tools. And it illustrates that most countries privilege voluntary approaches rather than more strict mandatory frameworks to ensure resilience. Next slide, please. So taking all that into consideration, you see what we've done, and you can find, I will send you the link. There's the OECD policy toolkit on governance of critical infrastructure resilience, which propose a novel series of principles to design and implement infrastructure resilience policies through effective partnerships. The toolkit has 7 steps which propose practical guidance and good practice to identify critical infrastructure, map out interdependencies, prioritize the functions, systems, and assets for resilience investments, forge partnerships between operators and government to build trust and share information, share responsibilities to protect critical infrastructure assets and systems, and show quick restoration of service with a mix of policy tools and relevant accountability mechanisms. And of course, to coordinate policies with neighboring countries to address cross-border dependencies. Next slide. So in conclusion, I would say that, yes, strategic planning for infrastructure investment should put resilience at the top. This is, I think, in the COVID and or possibly post-COVID context, this is today a priority of our citizens, of our governments. They want, everyone wants infrastructure services that keep running if a major shock happens. So the OECD recommendation on the governance of infrastructure and the policy toolkit that is specific to resilience can help inform infrastructure resilience policies in Asia. And going forward, I think the OECD can work more closely with you through case studies, policy reviews for more tailored policy analysis and advice on those aspects. So with that, I thank you for your attention and look forward to comments and feedback from the forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. Thanks for bringing concrete examples of resilience can be embedded into strategic planning for infrastructure, governance and delivery, and also for providing us with an overview on the policy toolkit that was in fact used for the OECD recommendation for designing the principle on critical infrastructure resilience. And thanks to all participants for bringing very good questions and comments on the chat. And I have one that I would like you to think about when giving the floor to the next speaker, which is about the effect that COVID is having in terms of the national budget being prioritized on investments towards the health sector instead of infrastructure development. That is something for the panelists to consider. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Antonius Shion Bing, the Deputy Director of the National Public Procurement Agency in Indonesia. Mr. Shion Bing, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. So actually, I have prepared my presentation, but I don't know, I cannot share from this. Okay, so somebody already made me as a co-host. So I hope I can share the document. Wait a minute. Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much once again. I appreciate the opportunity for us to present our presentation regarding government procurement in Indonesia. I will deliver some slides related with the COVID-19 procurement in Indonesia. So as an introduction, in Indonesia, our procurement overview, we have national budget in 2019 around 2,171.6 billion. So with this budget, we use for procurement around 1,168.4 billion. In Indonesia, we have several tools. We have electronic tendering, and also we have electronic purchasing. So the procurement entities, they can conduct the procurement with these tools, yeah, electronic tendering and electronic purchasing. Electronic purchasing, we have also e-catalog. We have also online shops. So yeah. With these numbers, the budget that we use for the procurement around 1,168 billion. For the infrastructure budget into 2019, it's around 29,642 billion. These numbers was increased from 2015, yeah. So each year, the infrastructure budget increased, yeah. In 2015, the budget was 18.292 billion. In 2016, 19.221 billion. And in 2017 is 27.735 billion, and 2018 29,000 35 billion. So the growth of the infrastructure budgets from 2015 was quite high. So this is 65.5, but in 2019 it became 1.0. But each of year the infrastructure budget remain increase. In Indonesia government procurement, we have the objective, the basic rules or the basic law that we have regarding the procurement in Indonesia is Presidential Regulation number 16 of 2018, and based on this regulation, we have the objectives to implement the value for money. So having the proper goods services for every penny spent, acquiring the right goods of services at any cost, which is measured by the quality, quantity, time, cost, location, and providers. Not only that, we specify the objective also to specific objectives. The first is improving the use of domestic products, and then increasing the participation of micro, small, and medium enterprises, enhancing the role of national business actors, supporting the implementation of research and utilization of goods services resulting from research, improving the participation of creative industries, and then to encourage economic quality and supporting sustainable procurement. So how the government of Indonesia can encourage the suppliers, and also not only for the national suppliers but for foreign suppliers, we also welcome for them to have the opportunity in public procurement. For the government procurement process in times of COVID-19, it based on the our institution regulation, National Public Procurement Agency Regulation number 13 in 2018. So actually, the process pretty similar with the regular or common public procurement, but since this regulation is dedicated for the emergency situation, as we have COVID-19 at this moment, so the process we make it as simple as it is in order to deliver the goods and services to overcome the COVID-19. So for the step one is the procurement plan. So it should be the identification of needs. The budget authorities identify needs of goods services, and after that, the procurement authorities, they have to identify the resources, the availability of resources in order to set up type of goods, services, and volume. How many the volume of the goods to overcome the situation, and then the method of procurement, they have to set up the method of procurement, whether it is used as a self-management or by or through the suppliers to deliver the goods and services. And the step two is selection. So this selection is not as complicated as the common process. For this emergency situation, the procurement authority select and appoint providers or suppliers capable of doing the project. So the procurement authority will seek which supplier can afford or can conduct or can deliver the goods or services that they need to overcome this situation. And the third one is the implementation of work. So this is, I'm sorry, this is in Bahasa Indonesia, but the process is when the procurement authority already appointed the providers, they have to deliver the appointment letter from to the providers, and then they have to, I mean, the procuring entity have to check the location together with the providers, together with the suppliers, and then hand over the goods or services to the location, and after that hand over the goods, and then the payment process. So actually it's quite simple for the emergency procurement. For the public-private partnership, yeah, we have also the regulation. So the evolving cross-sector public-private partnership regulatory framework in Indonesia. So the government of Indonesia has taken a series of major steps to refine the PPP policy and regulatory framework to improve the attractiveness and competitiveness of the government's public-private partnership program. So since the national budget is not enough to conduct the infrastructure procurement, the government still needs other budget resource. So one of the idea is doing the public-private partnership, and at the right side, this is the regulation that government provide for the PPP. Yeah. This is the summary of the project investment in 2020. So the project status for ready to offer is around 14,252.17 USD million, and the under preparation is 6,646.65 USD million, and the total projects around 20,898. So we still need the budget from this PPP. And in PPP scheme, yeah, for the procurement process in times of COVID, it is pretty similar like as I have explained before. So it's only for the procurement plan. So the left side is this is the procurement plan, and the right side this is the implementation. So once the procurement authority already made the procurement plan, and they can apply the procurement, but the requirement, the extra procurement, the extra requirement for PPP schemes, they have to do the pre-qualification for the participants. And the end, it's
could, if you have 2 minutes to finish, if you could finish 2 minutes, thank you.
Okay. And the challenges, this is since Indonesia is an archipelago country, yeah, infrastructure of electronic procurement system deployed to 34 provinces, yeah, this is our country. So the idea of government of Indonesia, how to provide the infrastructure in each region, in each province in Indonesia. This is the integrity and transparency, yeah. This is how to monitor our procurement process. Yeah, I make it very fast. And the anti-corruption framework in Indonesia, we have this one. We have Corruption Eradication Committee. We have also the audit board, attorney, police, citizen, internal auditor, civil society organization. This is the entity for the how to implement the anti-corruption. Yeah, okay, that's it. Thank you so much. This is very fast. Thank you.
Thank you. We will make the presentations available to the participants in any case. I think it's important that people could go through them with time. But thank you for providing us with an overview of the procurement system in Indonesia, and also for bringing the components that are taking us into the next session. I believe we are running out of time. So without further ado, I will give the floor to my colleague Matthew Kayan from the Infrastructure and Public Procurement Division at OECD to lead session 3 on public procurement strategies for infrastructure delivery.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all participants. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Indeed, in that session, we will discuss public procurement strategies for delivering infrastructure. We heard in the previous session the importance of strategic planning of infrastructure to respond to the COVID-19 crisis. We also heard in the first session about the usefulness of and the holistic approach of the recommendation on the governance of infrastructure. In fact, the last presentation already alluded to the importance and the criticality of procurement strategies to deliver infrastructure project and to respond to the crisis. But in that session, we would like to more specifically discuss the enabling environment for procuring infrastructure, and especially the digital ecosystem that could support the lean delivery of infrastructure projects. So to do this, we have the pleasure to have two panelists in that session, Mr. Han-Woo Lee, who is the Director of Construction Supervision Division in the Public Procurement Service in Korea, and also John Davis, who is the head of the subnational government and tech sector engagement at the Global Digital Marketplace Program. I would ask the two panelists to keep their intervention short because we already have a number of questions that were asked in the chat and that would be quite relevant for this session. But without further ado, I will leave the floor to Mr. Han-Woo Lee. Mr. Han-Woo Lee, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here and have an opportunity to explain digital transformation in project delivery and construction works in the middle of pandemic. I currently work as the director of the Construction Supervision Division of Public Procurement Service. The topic I'm going to talk about is how possibly COVID-19 accelerates the application of digital technologies in the field of public construction works. Next page, please. As you can see on this, yes, thank you. As you can see on this page, yeah, here, yes. These elaborate IT devices and apps look like having no connection with unorganized look of construction works. And it's not easy to think about how construction works can be affected by new technologies such as Internet of Things and artificial intelligence and other things like that. Move on to the next page, please. This is a bar chart showing daily new COVID-19 cases in my country. Recently, we're just seeing another surge in the number of confirmed cases as winter is coming. First of all, I'd like to introduce what procurement agencies in South Korea have done for containing the spread of the novel coronavirus. January 29th, the Korean government deployed its first guideline for public agencies, especially including regulations for its workforces, like wearing masks at works and working from home orders for at least over 1/3 of their employees. February 3rd, disease prevention measures like fever monitoring and recording health condition of individuals have been started in some public construction sites. February 13th, to reduce the damage from quarantine measures like a suspension of works when a confirmed case occurred in the site, the Korean government announced that it would exempt constructors' liability. Since the first surge sank, procurement agencies moved their focus on helping companies to ensure the pandemic crisis economically, with shortening periods of contracting procedures and widening advance payment opportunities. April 14, encouraging public bodies to expedite their purchasing procedures so that they could support recovery of the economy. Let's move on to the next page, please. What makes it continue to provide the same level of procurement services and keep construction works available during a nationwide health crisis? In my opinion, there are three big challenges. They are actually the most essential elements to maintain safe and stable procurement services. First, being able to work from home as much as working in the office environment. And secondly, the whole e-procurement system that enables contactless proceeding of construction contracts. The last one is related to the capacity of monitoring workers in construction sites. Fortunately, the Korean government has already had a lot of teleworking aid system, even though most of us haven't had enough experience to deal with. We already had a video conferencing system similar to Zoom, and we can access and write documents from the internet as well. A well-functioning e-procurement system made it possible to conduct almost all contracting process without meeting private businesses in person. But there were a few problems related to communications about proposals and evaluations. As you know, preventing the spread of disease depends on how to effectively trace the impacted individuals. The lack of monitoring tools over works in construction sites was a problem. On the other hand, social compromises about sharing in private information are quite beneficial to trace infection. Next page, please. On this page, I will show you some of the cases encouraging and accelerating digitization in delivery and construction. There are a lot of procedures and gateways on infrastructure delivery in my country. When we select for example, when we select an architect for public building project, there must be a couple of communication periods and evaluation meetings face to face. During the pandemic, as you know, we have to keep distancing and it's not available. So we needed to upgrade our online evaluation system to cover the entire process. Almost all of the building design firms are being selected through the online-based evaluation system now. Before contract officers publish their requests for proposals or bid invitations, there are a lot of gateways to pass through. By operating those processes very quickly, they will be able to speed up their spending as a practical tool that helps overcome the economic crisis triggered by the outbreak of COVID-19. Public procurement service is responsible for design reviews of major public building construction projects in each page of design development, such as schematic design, developed design, and construction documentation. And now we are trying to speed up by hiring test data refinement and AI-powered solutions. Several contractors have been studying the possibility of applying sensor networks and computer vision technologies as a way of ensuring labor safety in their site. And the Korean government also have been catalyzing those efforts and willing to pay a lot more taxpayers' money for that. Since demands for tracing and monitoring workers in construction sites has increased because of COVID-19. Now we're seeing a lot of new technologies installed here in construction sites. For example, security cameras identifying workers and their body temperature based on computer vision technology, and ID cards recording workers' location on the site. Lastly, the most important thing is that data comes along with all kinds of applications, and the data could facilitate brand new procurement-related service. On the next page, I'm going to introduce a little bit about a use case of collected data. Next page, please. It's getting more attention to the management of site workers from the perspective of disease control. Eventually, we got a chance to install several devices collecting on-site data in real time and develop a kind of online job portal service, enabling non-contact employment contracts and presuming demands of construction workers based on a calculation of man-hour inputs from estimation data we have. And providing a smart job matching service powered by AI that makes it easier to gather more users and their data too. Then more public services could be available to the industry. One of those might be improvements in a working environment in the field of construction. Maybe we'll easily check if contractors are properly complying with a bundle of regulations like additional payments for extended working hours and compulsory enrollments of social insurance later on. And also remote supervision is another benefit of the digital transformation. The number of workers' specific work schedules will be allowed to access in real time remotely. I have some lessons learned I'd like to share with you on the next page. Number one, establishing immediate preventive measures. We need to protect our project delivery and to minimize damages. Number two, e-government infra is the cornerstone to continue our services during the pandemic. Number three, enhancing efficiency, cutting non-essential procedures are required to help digitization. And number four, achieved data should be dealt with as a valuable resource for better public services. Thank you so much. I finished my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anwuli, for this impressive presentation. We saw indeed that in Korea and the central purchasing body, how the COVID-19 crisis accelerated the digital transformation of the procurement of infrastructure. Yet, in OECD countries, on average, 2/3 of the procurement is carried out at subnational level. And more than half of infrastructure investment is also carried out at subnational level. So I would like to turn the floor to Mr. John Davis to indeed see if this digital transformation is also something happening at local level and, for example, with cities. John, the floor is yours, and I would like to ask you to limit your intervention to 5 minutes because I would really like to ask you some of the questions that were posed in the chat. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, Matthew, and thank you very much for the opportunity, Paolo, Matthew, and Hunwoo Lee. It's great to be on a platform with you and to address this particular topic. What I'll do in the next few minutes is just give you an overview of a practical program that we're operating through the Global Digital Marketplace program, which I know some of you are aware of, and takes its principles from the UK government's government digital service activity over the last 9 years, where we look to provide countries in Southeast Asia, in particular Malaysia and Indonesia, with, if you like, lessons learned, but on a practical basis of those lessons learned through our own experience and helping their procurement organizations, both at the national, but in particular, as you say, Matteo, at the subnational level, where often subnationals can, if you like, move a little bit quicker and implement change and digital transformation with speed and at pace and in an agile way, which is everything we encourage in terms of digitalization. I think one of the things that we're seeing from a digital transformation, and this applies to the infrastructure sector and smart cities in particular, where if you like, public procurement is the vertical in digitalization in regard to technology and the use of technology, and digital transformation is the horizontal. So it's, if you like, a T effect, but it really requires both of those to operate complementarily. So the way we operate is we apply a sort of a needs analysis discovery. We look at a country, look at subnationals, and we then try and understand what is needed in regard to their journey and their journey mapping associated with public procurement. So public procurement, as we see it, is everything from at the beginning spend controls through the contract award, through assurance models, as well as things like open data and capacity building and capability building. So all of those components combine to come up with a, if you like, a journey map of projects, proof of concept projects, where we literally try and develop the practicalities using the tools and technologies that exist to accelerate the digitalization for those procurement agencies within the national and subnational governments. We're seeing a tremendous amount of activity in Malaysia and also in Indonesia around areas such as Bandung, areas such as in Jabar, digital agency, Penang, Selangor. All of these subnationals have cities in them, local authorities in them, that are keen to look at digitalization, but don't necessarily understand the steps to take to do that. And this is one of the areas where the Global Digital Marketplace program helps and supports at a practical level on the ground. One of the things we've done, just to finalize this, in the last year is develop something called the Digital Buying Guide. You can find it on digitalbuyingguide.org. And what it is an encapsulation of everything associated with public procurement that provides guidance and advice, and in particular case studies and a growing list of case studies that allows subnationals, city governments, local authorities to understand the frame of reference they need to look at, the technology codes of practice, the service standards, things that will help build up their digital aspirations and actually take them on that journey. In addition to the Digital Buying Guide, or within the Digital Buying Guide, I should say, there is also an emergency buying section, which is specifically associated with obviously the current situation with COVID and how you can address the key elements of digital public procurement, but in the context of an emergency. So again, I'd encourage you to have a look at the Digital Buying Guide and the emergency guidance within it and the case studies that will give you an idea of how you can develop practical guidance on the ground and actually implement examples of public procurement without, if you like, or by reducing the risk of corruption, by keeping everything transparent, open, using open data and all of the things that we talk about in regards to transparency. it's a subject that you can talk about for a significant amount of time, but I'm conscious we're tight on time at the moment to keep everything on track for this session. So Matthew, I'm happy for you to pick up again and take questions.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you for being conscious of time. Also, indeed, we have some questions very much like the theme that you mentioned around the horizontal integration and the vertical integration for public procurement. One question around digitalization first that was asked in the chat. The question is, we saw in both your intervention the acceleration of digital transformation and the importance and the usefulness of data automation to support the delivery of infrastructure project. What will it mean for jobs? Do you see automated IT systems and digital solutions replacing jobs, or do you see the emerging existence of different jobs or new profiles being because of the use of data? I don't know if Mr. Nhouli, you would like to answer first to this question.
Wow, it's a kind of big question, I think. But I'd say some area limited in from the area limited in what I gave you about on my presentation only. I don't think new technology like artificial intelligence or other sensor networks, something like that, doesn't mean the loss of new jobs, because especially what I'm now seeing is we have almost more job because we made a new platform, job seeking platform, and in there many people can be matched with contractors and other subcontractors for their job. And as you know, when we develop kind of new system, there are a lot of operating person, and it's one of job creating method, I think. Yeah, that's all I can say about.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. John, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I would just like to say that I can certainly echo agreement to these comments. In the UK, GDS over recent times has generated getting on for 27 new digital roles. And so if you look at the profile, that number of roles is something that can be, if you like, repeated across all governments, all local authorities, etc. And these roles are digital roles which only go to actually help the process and speed up the process of digitalization. And we find that bringing these new roles into government in particular, and bringing them in-house, understanding the data roles are probably some of the key, most important roles that we see in the ecosystem. And so I see it as very positive. I think governments and authorities, there's a legacy to some of the previous roles that might have been done in the past that has been taken over through automation and the availability of data. So I do think we must be sympathetic to that and consider that in the, if you like, availability of these new roles to retrain people, to develop capacity and capability in a harmonious way.
Thank you very much, John. maybe also one question coming from the chat, which is a broader question around procurement strategies to deliver infrastructure project. But do you think that implementing sustainable public procurement strategies for infrastructure could be one of the avenue for trying to reconciling? We heard in the first session the question around the balance to find between different policy objectives, economic objectives, social objectives, but also environmental objective. For delivering infrastructure project in the post-COVID context, do you see the use of sustainable public procurement strategies as being one of the avenue to try to reconcile those different objectives? Mr. Lee, if you want. And sorry, but if you could keep the answer very short because we're almost running out of time. Mr. Lee, the floor is yours if you want.
Sorry. I totally agree your concept, especially in construction project. We can insert something, some ideas like you suggested, as a sorry. Yeah. I'd like to say John will be well, answering more better than me. I think.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. John, at local level, do you see sustainability as being an increasingly important issue in infrastructure?
Yes, absolutely. And I think things like, for example, in the UK, we have something called a local digital declaration. And what that is able to do is bring forward structures, frameworks, standards, codes of practice, and guidelines. And it's not just including sustainability, but it's also around such as gender equality, social inclusion, carbon capture, climate change, as well as the whole picture of sustainability, which I see as covering all of the above as a very broad topic. So I think the local level will more and more become uppermost in people's mind, because it will affect or impact on the citizen. And and the user-centered design nature of digital is it's all about the citizen. If you start with the citizen, you start with the impact on those that category, then everything else kind of works from that. So I think those are the issues. And locally, I'm very encouraged by what we're seeing in Southeast Asia, around where local participants want to get involved and want to, if you like, be involved in the success of that sustainability.
Thanks very much, John. And in fact, thank you to both of you for this very interesting discussion. And now it's the time to hand over the floor back to the chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mathieu. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Thank you, John Davis. Well, thanks for bringing these different procurement strategies to the discussion. I think they also connect very well with the work the OECD is doing in terms of cities and in terms of bringing responsible business conduct principles to public procurement systems across OECD countries. And I encourage you to look at these different projects on our website. And I will ask you, Mathieu, to continue there and to moderate the final session. The time runs very fast and we are almost reaching the end of the forum. But now we will have the final session on monitoring and evaluation frameworks for better governance of infrastructure. So I'll give you back the floor, Mathieu. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paulo. And indeed, we discussed about a number of elements, a number of objectives that could be pursued by leveraging on infrastructure projects. But of course, you also need to have the monitoring and the evaluation frameworks in place to make sure that you, in fact, achieve those objectives. So that will be, in fact, the main focus of the last session of this Asia Public Governance Forum. And for this session, I have the pleasure to count on two distinguished panelists, Mr. Blake Clipper, who is the Principal Infrastructure Advisor in the newly created, or almost newly created, New Zealand Infrastructure Commission, and also Mr. Giovanni Coletta, who's a senior expert in the Ministry of Economy and Finance in Italy. So without further ado, I would turn the floor to Blake. Blake, please, the floor is yours.
Kia ora koutou, and thank you for the opportunity to engage with you all today. And thank you to the panel members who have gone before me in grappling with some of the more difficult questions that have come through on the chat. I really appreciate you taking those. My name is Blake Lepper, and I'm a Principal Advisor with the New Zealand Infrastructure Commission, Te Wahanga, or Infracom, as it's known in New Zealand for short. It is a privilege to be part of this session. The sudden and global nature of the COVID-19 pandemic emphasised the importance of strengthening regional cooperation to respond rapidly to the crisis. But I think it's also reminded many of us that there are many challenges and opportunities that are shared throughout our region, not just this virus. By learning from each other in our ongoing work, we can all provide better outcomes for our citizens. Today, I want to introduce you to the New Zealand Infrastructure Commission and the work we are doing to improve the way New Zealand delivers infrastructure and the outcomes delivered from our infrastructure systems. It looks at what we are doing to enable an effective performance monitoring framework over time. I hope you find some benefit in hearing our story. Infrastructure is a critical enabler for economic and social outcomes, but for a number of decades, New Zealand infrastructure investment has been slow, expensive, and limited. New Zealand's population and topography pose challenges for the planning and delivery of infrastructure. Yet we have previously placed responsibility on small, fragmented authorities that lacked the ability to fund and the incentive to think beyond their boundaries. As a result, it has recently been recognised a better approach was needed. Can we go to the next slide? Infracom was set up as an autonomous Crown entity designed by legislation to be an enduring, non-partisan advisory body to government, to ensure that there was consistent advice provided to government on the infrastructure priorities over time. As an organisation, our focus is on ensuring the government delivers infrastructure for a thriving New Zealand. This requires us to support a system that ensures effective infrastructure investment. We cannot achieve our aims by simply building more or faster. We must ensure we identify infrastructure projects, practices, and reforms that work well. And when they do work well, we must know why. That places monitoring and evaluation of the core of what we will do. When considering how to deliver effective infrastructure investment, we think it is important to think in terms of an integrated model for infrastructure. Infrastructure is more than just a road or a pipe. It's a system of systems. It's common to think of infrastructure in terms of sectors like transport or water. We do this ourselves, but it's important to remember that they are all parts of a whole. Our roads carry pipes and power lines, and they connect to homes, workplaces, hospitals, and schools. Each relies on the other, and we rely on them all working together. Our infrastructure will only be effective if these interfaces are recognised and addressed. Next slide, please. So what are we doing and how will this help? Our current work program is focused on three main areas, each of which will support a more effective investment framework. Firstly, and gladly consistently with the first recommendation, OECD recommendation on the governance of infrastructure, we are developing a long-term infrastructure strategy for New Zealand. This is intended to establish broad agreement on the objective and vision for our future and establish a holistic, sustainable, and long-term approach to infrastructure. The creation of any evaluation and monitoring framework relies on a shared understanding of what success looks like, an enduring benchmark against which the performance of our infrastructure systems can be measured. This is what our 30-year vision will seek to achieve. Over time, we will be able to see whether we're getting closer or further from our goal. Secondly, our team of advisors provide government agencies, local authorities, and others support on the procurement and delivery of major infrastructure projects. Under New Zealand's government rules associated with procurement, any agency considering an investment in infrastructure with a cost of more than $50 million must consult with Infracom early in the development of the project's business case and follow relevant published Infrastructure Commission guidance. This early and direct involvement at the project level allows us to ensure that projects are set up with an outcomes focus from the very start of their planning process. Embedding clear objectives in a project's DNA from the very beginning not only drives positive design and procurement outcomes, it also sets a framework early that over time will allow the increased monitoring of success. We also use this opportunity to take a targeted focus on project governance, ensuring this is appropriately structured with clarity on accountability for delivering on the benefits of an investment, not just the bricks and mortar. Thirdly, we are working on gathering information about projects and planning and delivery. And if we could go to the next slide. Making better decisions relies on better data. However, data collection will always be an onerous task unless contributors get value back from their contributions. As a result, the focus of our data collection has been on the development of a comprehensive, visible, coordinated pipeline of infrastructure work throughout our country. The infrastructure pipeline shows the what, the where, and importantly, the when of infrastructure investment. This was called for by our industry as it enables participants to plan ahead and coordinate it, and delivers value to all parts of the sector. For the construction industry, it allows companies to plan and invest in their businesses, informed by a confident view of upcoming projects. For contributors, it is enabling better planning of investment in New Zealand, smoothing the market, allowing for better utilisation of resources, capability and capacity, which will increase value return for every dollar spent. It also gives information on other planned investments, building communication and improving coordination where possible. As a result of these benefits, Infracom has been able to create a valuable database, tracking projects from inception to completion, which over time will help identify issues and opportunities at a national scale. After a year of operating this platform, the pipeline now contains information on over 1,600 projects, with a total value of $47 billion from 82 contributing organisations, all of which has been provided on a voluntary basis. Next slide, please. Going forward, we are looking at how we can enhance this pipeline data to create the New Zealand Forward Works Viewer. The Forward Works Viewer is a tool that was established after the Christchurch earthquake, when constant clashes between rebuild projects increased cost and created worse outcomes for the city. The Forward Works Viewer is an online collaboration and coordination platform that presents project information in a way that allows easy identification of clashes, conflicts, and opportunities. It gives individual agencies the information they need to deliver better outcomes from their projects than they would otherwise. As more information is added to the platform, it has the potential to become a powerful data analytics platform, potentially combining real-time data from traffic monitors, water meters, air quality sensors, and other devices in one place to allow for faster feedback loops on project outcomes and more efficient management at a systems level. We think that working together, this framework from vision through project planning and implementation will support the delivery of the infrastructure we need. Thank you, and I welcome questions as we go forward.
Thank you very much, Blake. And again, it's very interesting to see that indeed this development of data frameworks and data analytics not only help Infracom or other institutions to monitor progress in the implementation and the delivery of infrastructure project, but also participate to increase trust in institutions and for citizens, but also for businesses. On this point, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Giovanni Coletta from Italy.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me to this meeting. Yes, my talk focuses on public-private partnership and the monitoring of these operations in Italy. Next slide. As soon as the COVID pandemic emerged, the Ministry of Economy and Finance created a web-based portal for monitoring of partnership operation. with a view to an optimal use of resources, greater efficiency in services to citizens, and for a greater control of public accounts, mostly. Several necessities spur to the creation of this portal. The need for the government to understand the abilities and expertise of the local authorities engaged in a given project, and creating a network with all relevant government entities, sharing of PPP best practices. And you know, as Anna Maria said earlier, we cannot improve what we do not know. So first of all, we have to know all the problem of local authorities. Another reason is making more accurate forecasts of public debt is very important, and thus reducing surprises which may arise from statistical reclassifications by Eurostat. Reducing construction times, allocate risks in a better way, and also reduce the opportunities for conflict. That is a very big problem in Italy. And use, last but not least, use national and European resources in the best way. Next slide. So now I will illustrate the technical characteristics of the portal. The portal is divided into 3 areas: the public section, the private section, and the community. The community, where some entities are already experimenting with the functioning of the portal and sharing data on contracts with the Ministry of Economy and Finance. Next slide. The public area will be the point of reference of the PPP for all public administrations and institutions. Document and thematic insights will be the focus of this area. These insights will be suggested by the analysis of the contract entered by the local authorities and by the dialogue with the bodies that have been chosen to carry out the experimentation. That is the target bodies, which belong to the communities. Next. The private, the reserved area, is the place where public bodies enter their project data, and receive alert and suggestions from the experts involved in the project related to any critical issues of their project. Next slide. Thank you. This slide shows what a single registered entity sees when it has entered some contracts. Summary data that include information of statistical treatment. The latter in particular are the results that emerge from the questionnaire regarding a specific project, and that our ministry has drawn from Eurostat rules. Of course, this is only a treatment indication based on the responses to the questionnaire. The statistical treatment will be obviously the role of our statistical institute and Eurostat itself to classify contract inside or outside the budget of the public administration. For now, the registration of entities on the portal is optional, not mandatory, and obviously we do not predict to see any impact on public accounts on the works already carried out and accounted for. Our goal is more oriented to the knowledge of the current state in order to obtain better results in the future. So next slide. So with regard to the community area, this is the place where the experimental bodies, our ministry, and the expert of each sector meet. The community area started after the summer, and the first contract have been already entered. This phase is very important because it's where the exchange of mutual experiences takes place. And next slide. This image shows the entities involved in this initial phase scattered throughout the national territory. There are municipalities, local health authorities, central purchasing bodies and regions. And next slide. When the portal will be fully operational, the data will be shared with the Presidency of the Council, the DIP department, with the Statistical Institute and the Italian Anti-Corruption Authority. And one last point, given the overlap with PPP, especially from an accounting point of view, it's our intention to also monitor the EPC energy performance contract project. These contracts are in a widespread use in Italy. We employ a similar statistical approach to the analysis of all of these projects. And to this end, we also involve the responsibility entity, the ENEA is the name of this entity. In conclusion, following OECD and PPP principles, our principal objective is to add value to new projects and to stop bad projects from going forward. The monitoring of this project helps us reach this objective. This approach serves as a kind of vaccine against inefficiency and waste of public resources. Looking to the future, we expect the portal to be complete and fully accessible to all public administration users by sometime in mid-2021, maybe later. So nothing more important to say. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Giovanni. And well, good to know that we already have a vaccine. Maybe not for COVID yet, but still, that's very interesting to see your insights on this platform and how it brings also together different stakeholders, which is something central to the recommendation on the governance of infrastructure. I would like to ask both of you, and if, in fact, benefiting from one question in the chat, you shared with us the initiatives your countries are actually implementing on better measuring the performance of infrastructure projects from a cost perspective, from a delivery time frame perspective. I would ask you, we heard in previous session that infrastructure projects in the post-COVID context were also meant to achieve a number of broader objectives. How do you capture the achievement of those objectives? Better environmental performance, better social inclusion, and so on and so forth. How do your evaluation frameworks or monitoring framework, how do they capture these dimensions? Blake, maybe you.
So I think the answer to that comes back to the most important thing for that performance and monitoring evaluation framework is to be very clear around the outcomes that we're seeking from our not just the established or the completed infrastructure systems, but that process along the way. And I think that's where we are in the development of our performance and evaluation monitoring framework, is still in that definition of exactly what we want to achieve. So what does a successful social outcome look like from procurement? What does a successful environmental outcome look like from the way we're building our roads or our seawalls or our hospitals? It's only once we've got that definition of success well defined that we'll be able to capture the data to see how we're performing. But our approach has been that the lack of clarity on everything we want to measure should not start us collecting the data today. And I think that's been the really important part of our approach, is just to get started collecting as much data as possible, because it is only going to be when we have that data over time that we'll be able to do the type of analysis to really find out where the strengths and weaknesses of our procurement and delivery systems are, and make suggestions on how they can be improved in the future.
Thanks, Blake. Indeed, data is certainly key to that. Giovanni, do you have something to add to this?
In Italy, this is a very good question for us because we have a lot of institutions that in some way have different responsibilities on infrastructure, PPPs. So that's the reason why we organized a platform where put around the table all these institutions and make more easy for local authorities to talk with each institution, find the expert when they need. So it's not easy. Sometimes a decision from of all institutions are not in the same direction. So in our future, we want to go in the same direction, but it's not absolutely easy because not only because of the consequences of the COVID, but in general, institutions should be better coordinated in a public infrastructure.
Thanks, Giovanni. I would also like to reflect on a question that was posed in the chat, and have your views on that. We heard in session 2 the importance of resilience of infrastructure and the impact that resilience might have, or increased resilience might have on businesses, on activities. I would like to ask you, do you, in terms of monitoring and evaluation framework, do you have a way to somewhat assess the cost of resilience and trying to understand what are the efforts and the inputs necessary to increase resilience in infrastructure projects? Blake, do you have any experience in New Zealand on resilience and the cost of resilience?
So I have lots of experience on the cost of lack of resilience. I've spent the last 10 years of my career working on the redevelopment of Christchurch, which is the city that I'm currently calling in from, which was, very much devastated by an earthquake in 2010, 2011. And looking at that data earlier around the impact of a flood in France, I can assure you that on all of those measures, the earthquake was much more nationally significant here. So it is something that is the top of mind for us as we start to roll out our work program as the Infrastructure Commission, and developing a really standard framework for resilience assessment during the business case phase is one of our top priorities for the Infrastructure Commission, because in our country, we're very, very aware of the cost of not considering resilience appropriately when investment decisions are made.
Thanks very much, Blake. Very interesting. I would just like to quickly follow up with you, Blake, on this question, and just trying to understand stakeholder engagement in the monitoring of infrastructure project. So you are newly created commission, and of course you're also partnering with the public agencies that are responsible for delivering those projects. How do you frame the relationship throughout the development stage of the infrastructure project?
So we have an interesting dynamic as a semi-independent agency. We have really positive relationships with delivery agency because of the experience and expertise we can provide. We provide essentially a no-cost procurement support service through to these agencies, which encourages them to take our advice. But we're also establishing ourselves as a trusted advisor to government, and the government processes mean that we will be consulted in major infrastructure investment decisions. So there is a real stick to our role as well, that if agencies haven't worked well with us in the development of their business cases and investment proposals, it can be difficult for them to get through the approvals process.
Great. Thank you very much. I would just to quickly following up on that, I would like to ask you also if there's any participation of citizens and civil society in the monitoring. We have seen in some countries citizens being actively included in the monitoring of infrastructure project by reporting, for example, delays in the construction phase. So is it something that you are also considering and integrating into your strategies?
Yeah, certainly it's hoped that in future the development of the way we share and present information will give the opportunity for people to report when things don't look incorrect. The tool we've developed with the ForwardWorks viewer also allows, and this was used during the Christchurch phase, things like event overlays to be put onto it. So if there's some sort of civic event that is going to have an impact on either an infrastructure project or the surrounding infrastructure network that should be taken into account in the planning or programming of a piece of infrastructure work, then that information can be put into that tool and it will automatically generate a clash notification to the relevant people. So we hope that with further development, these tools can become a really useful platform for integration between both government, private sector infrastructure providers and members of the public who use infrastructure systems.
Thanks, Blake. Giovanni, is civil society also somewhat involved in the platform and the monitoring program you shared with us?
The community is started after the summer. So for the moment, we have some contract that we are trying to control. We are also trying to check if our questionnaire is absolutely in line with Eurostat rules. We are trying to understand if local administration understand perfectly the questions, if they have data to answer to this question. So it's not easy. Different local authorities have probably different problems. And we also have to know some kind of issue to this authority. So we don't know exactly how much, what kind of problems they have, if they are more accounting problems or if they have more problems related to value for money, for example, or other issues. So we are trying to understand for the moment the most important issues that public administrations have. And when we finish this community, we will be able to put online all the documents. We'll be able to probably to ask to all the administration, all the public administration in Italy to try to insert their data on the database. In this way, we could better understand the problem. We could control the answer to the questionnaire. We could organize meeting in order to face this particular problem that emerge from these issues. And this way, we can better meet, their problem and in some way try to know the situation and add value for money to all the project. Infrastructure in Italy is a very big problem for a lot of different point of view. PPPs are not so used. I mean, until now, because public administrations are very strict to the classic procurement. Even our framework, legislative framework, is too much concentrated on public procurement. Maybe we need a PPP law, probably. This is probably one of the first important steps we need to try to reach. And but for the moment, we are trying to face the first step. And so in 1 year, probably we'll be able to answer to answer to the question to the whole public administration. I mean, not only to the community. And our portal, our website could be the first place for public administration to know something more about PPPs, to know something more about efficiency, and because our goal is mainly control public accounts. So, but this is not only the only thing that is important about PPPs. A PPP project could be on balance or off balance. This is important for us, but maybe this is not important for other country, or in general not important for the success of a project.
Thanks, Giovanni. Well, in any case, well, infrastructure is not only a challenge in Italy, and in fact, that's also one of the reasons we're precisely here discussing all of these issues. Thank you very much. This brings us to a close for this session. I would like to thank you both very much for this very insightful discussion, and then turn the floor to Paolo. Paolo, back to you.
Thank you, Mathieu. Thank you, Blake and Giovanni. Thanks for staying late, Blake, in fact. I think, this session brought several interesting topics as well. And I'm sure we could easily spin off several topics from the different sessions that would allow us to go deeper into each of these topics. But the time ran out for this forum. I think it was very interesting, and it brought us a serious debate around infrastructure governance and delivery for the region. And I'm sure the OECD will continue to be a key actor in delivering and supporting countries in the region. And before giving the floor to the final speaker of the day, I would like to take the opportunity to invite Mr. Edwin Lau, the recently appointed head of the Infrastructure and Public Procurement Division at OECD, to guide us through the next steps in this program. Edwin, please.
Thanks very much, Paolo. I think all of you should join me in thanking the speakers and the organizers for what was a very interesting set of presentations with some really concrete experiences, which can help us think about what the specific needs of the Southeast Asia region are. We talked about some of the planning and capacity, coordination, monitoring and risk management needs that are part of good infrastructure governance. But I think what ties it all together is the need for better evidence. And the work that we've done in the Asia region has really shown that there is still a lack of good evidence in terms of what practices work, in terms of evidence on the quality and delivery of infrastructure projects. And when I was looking through the chat, I saw a number of comments which were speaking to the political nature, ultimately, of infrastructure investment. And that's something that we didn't explicitly draw upon so much because, and COVID has probably just sped up this desire to have quick results, quick turnaround, quick impact. And of course, that is true, but we're also have to keep in mind that we're building for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And that many of the infrastructure decisions that we take today are setting us on a path. And so when we think about the green recovery, when we think about the sustainability of our infrastructure, that's why we need to have this infrastructure governance approach to make sure that we have the right processes and evidence in place to strike the balance between the immediate political demands and the longer term needs of our economies and our societies. So the OECD, we stand ready to work with all of you, in part to make sure that not only are we strengthening the delivery and planning of infrastructure, but also that we can communicate what you're doing and put infrastructure planning at the heart of our recovery discussions, at the heart of the government's recovery plans. And so I think some of the presentations that were made, for example, by New Zealand, looking at both the carrots and the sticks to make sure that those proper processes are taken into account, the proper consultation and the broad thinking, that's very relevant and interesting here. Also, there's the issue of how do we ensure that you have the necessary capacity and the monitoring tools to make sure that the strategies are realized. So the OECD can work with you both through country reviews that we've done on infrastructure governance, on PPP management, on public procurement, also through our regional network of our policy network on PPPs, and we hope to be announcing more information on that soon. And then we can also do specific webinars, expert group meetings, and trainings with all of you to help you build the capacity in your teams, and also to spread the message with regard to the need for better infrastructure governance. So we hope to be in touch with you and to continue this work that we've been discussing today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Edwin. Thanks for bringing these insights. And as you can see already on the slide, I would like to invite Mr. Gabriel Pasquini, the Director and Senior PPP Advisor of the Presidency of the Council of Ministers in Italy. He is also the Chair of the OECD Network of the Senior Infrastructure and PPP Officials that had the meeting 1 month ago by the end of October. Gabriele, if you could make the final reflections on this forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Edwin. Thank you, Paolo. I would like to thank you all of you for your participation today. Throughout this forum, we had a very fruitful discussion that provided us with important insights on infrastructure governance practices in Asia, particularly in a COVID-19 context. The current economic, fiscal, and social context has built momentum for government to use investment and enhanced delivery of infrastructure to advance simultaneously broader multidisciplinary policy objectives. However, it is clear that infrastructure investment alone will not suffice. Better governance is the vehicle for more effective and efficient investment by both the private and the public sector. Without the right institutional capacities and appropriate decision-making processes, it will be almost impossible to ensure that increased infrastructure investments contribute to a sustainable rebound. Today, we touched on three crucial aspects of infrastructure governance that require a closer attention. First, we discussed how strategic planning and appropriate selection and prioritization of projects could facilitate countries' efforts to design and implement infrastructure programs. Moving forward, governments should choose and deliver infrastructure investments that will effectively target sustainable and inclusive growth objectives and attain expected economic and social outcomes. The second session covered how the region can unlock the value of the infrastructure sector through enhancement of digitalization and how public procurement can be leveraged to achieve various strategic policy objectives, including innovation and technological advancement. Finally, the third session brought up relevant points on how monitoring is essential to understand the performance of infrastructure assets in real life and inform future investments and upgrades in order to deliver quality services to users and citizens. New tools and modern technology for monitoring and evaluation were presented as an example of how to increase accountability in the implementation of infrastructure projects. I would like to close this event with one key message, which is that the OECD will continue to support countries in the region in their task to drive an infrastructure-led recovery. The OECD recently supported infrastructure reforms in Spain and Argentina, and stands ready to contribute to countries' efforts in designing better infrastructures governance frameworks. The OECD recommendation on the governance of infrastructures is a very useful tool for countries in the region to maximize the impact of increased levels of infrastructures investment. We look forward to continue engaging with each one of you to collaboratively to implement the recommendations, insights, and tools and enhance even further the infrastructures governance frameworks in the region. Thank you all for your participation. And thank you to OECD for this big work.
Thank you so much. Grazie mille, Gabriele. Thanks for these final remarks. Thanks to all speakers, thanks to all participants for a very interactive and engaging discussion. I would encourage you to continue engaged with our work through the OECD infrastructure and public procurement work streams. You can find more about our work precisely in the links that you can see there. I would like to thank the OECD team that was working behind the scenes, and also the Korea Policy Center team for bringing this forum together. I believe this is the beginning of a very fruitful discussion in the region, and I would like to close this event by thanking all of you. Stay safe and all the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.